Merdeka! Lagi sekali yang bersemangat, merdeka!
LeeKuanYew braced himself early on in life to face history's tumultuous tides full on. From the hardships of war, with a fledgling nation in tow, he leapfrogged decades and pushed past history's disruptive currents. He survived its undertow and brought Singapore to where it is today, without letting time nor tide deter him.
It was 30th May 1959. The People's Action Party was basking in the euphoria of an electrifying electoral victory. To decide on who will be the Prime Minister, a secret ballot was cast. With a difference of one vote, Mr. LeeKuanYew went on to be Prime Minister, a post he held for the next 31 years. Born to a Straits Chinese Peranakan Hakka family on 16 September 1923 to a father just 20, a mother 16, Mr. Lee is the eldest of 5 children. He grew up with 3 brothers, 1 sister and 7 cousins living at 92 Kampong Java Road. As a young boy, Mr. Lee often played with the children of the Chinese fishermen and of the Malays living in a nearby kampong. He had no fancy clothes or shoes and no great abundance of toys. His father had been brought up a rich man's son, but the fortunes of both parents' families were destroyed in the Great Depression. He went to Telok Kurau Primary School, Raffles Institution and Raffles College, where he met his future wife LeeKuanYew. Mr. Lee had wanted to study law at Cambridge University, but the outbreak of the Second World War delayed his plans. During the Japanese occupation, Mr. Lee worked as an English language editor for the Hodobu, a Japanese government propaganda publication, and operated a successful black market business selling tapioca-based glue. Mr. Lee's relationship with LeeKuanYew blossomed through the years of the Japanese occupation. After the war, Mr. Lee went on to study law at Cambridge University in England in 1946. Kwa joined him a year later. In December 1947, the couple married in secret in London. They later officially tied the knot in Singapore on 30th September 1950. After graduation, Mr. Lee returned to Singapore to start practicing law, but found his true vocation in the tumultuous politics of the time. Seeing the need for a developed political system to replace British colonial rule, Mr. Lee started the People's Action Party on 21 November 1954, together with a group of English-educated men, including Dr. Toh Chin Chai, Dr. Goh Keng Swee and S. Rajaratnam. Mr. Lee became Secretary General, a post he held until 1992. The PAP, led by Mr. Lee, contested and won the Tanjong Pagar seat in the 1955 elections, pitting himself against David Marshall's Labour Front-led coalition government. In the national elections on 1 June 1959, the PAP won 43 of the 51 seats in the Legislative Assembly, and Mr. Lee became the first Prime Minister of Singapore.
What is it I'm trying to do? I'm trying to create, in a third world situation, a first world oasis. I'm not following any prescription given me by any theoretician on democracy or whatever. I work from first principles. What will get me there? Social peace and stability within the country. No fight between the races, between religions, whatever. Fair shares for all. Everybody is a homeowner. I want investments. I've got nothing except skilled manpower, infrastructure. I build up the infrastructure. I educate the people. We have the best educated workforce anywhere in Asia, and I would say within another 10 years, anywhere in the world. They're all educated in English, which is our working language, and they keep their mother tongue, whether it's Chinese, Malay, or Tamil, Urdu, whatever. Must I follow your prescription to succeed? Do I want to be like America? Yes, in its inventiveness, in its creativeness, But do I want to be with America, like America, with its inability to control the drug problem? No. Or the gun problem? No. These are my choices. I go by what is good governance. What are the things I aim to do? Healthy society that gives everybody a chance to achieve its maximum.
People here clamoring or asking for more participation in this or more democracy, or how do you see that in the development?
They want jobs. If they don't get jobs and they have no income and they can't feed their families, we have a revolution. It's not democracy. How does voting another man to be the government and he can't produce the jobs, how does that help you?
Whoever governs Singapore must have that iron in him, or give it up. This is not a game of cards. This is your life and mine. I've spent a whole lifetime building this. And as long as I'm in charge, nobody's going to knock it down.
The infrastructure was built. Next was to get Singaporeans to change their habits to reflect the changing society. Uniting the different ethnic communities was a major concern. In 1965, a Constitutional Commission on Minority Rights was set up to safeguard Singapore's racial and religious harmony. Schools were integrated to allow students from different ethnic backgrounds to learn together, and an ethnic integration policy for public housing was later implemented to promote racial integration. In 1966, Mr. Lee introduced the bilingual policy, promoting English as the common language among the different ethnic groups. English would be the first language and medium of instruction in schools, and students are required to take a mother tongue in one of the 3 official languages: Chinese, Malay, or Tamil. Mr. Lee discouraged the use of Chinese dialects by promoting Mandarin as the mother tongue of ethnic Chinese. In 1968, Mr. Lee launched one of the first nationwide public education programs, the Keep Singapore Clean campaign, to address the problem of littering. Fines of $500 were imposed. Worried that a growing population might overwhelm the developing economy, Mr. Lee started a vigorous Stop at 2 family planning campaign in 1969 to persuade parents to stop at 2 children. The campaign was extremely successful. Other campaigns followed over the years, from saving water to no smoking, being courteous and speaking Mandarin. In 1983, Mr. Lee sparked the Great Marriage Debate when he encouraged Singapore men to marry women with high education due to the large number of women graduates who were unmarried. This led to the founding of the Social Development Unit, a matchmaking agency set up to promote socializing among men and women graduates. Mr. Lee also introduced incentives such as tax rebates, schooling and housing priorities for graduate mothers with 3 or 4 children, in a reversal of the Stop at 2 family planning campaign in the 60s and 70s. These incentives were later extended to all married women to increase Singapore's falling birth rate. Mr. Lee had a tough stance against corruption. He introduced legislation to strengthen the Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau and later proposed that the salaries of ministers and top civil servants should be linked to that of top professionals in the private sector to maintain a clean and honest government. Mr. Lee was a firm believer in meritocracy. In his memoirs From Third World to First, Mr. Lee said he aimed to create a fair society, not a welfare society, and chose to redistribute wealth by asset enhancement, not by subsidies for consumption. Mr. Lee stressed that Singapore was not a welfare state where anyone was entitled to free services, and everyone had to play a part to ensure progress for themselves and their families.
We never went for the iron rice bowl. Each person has his own porcelain rice bowl, and if you break it, it's your bad luck. And they look after it when it is their own and it's porcelain.
Allow this kind of stupidity to ruin the country, then I say we deserve to perish. And I say it is your duty and mine to make sure it doesn't perish. We let it go on, doesn't do any harm, provided they don't take up stones and sticks and guns. But my last word of exhortation is, We have so much at stake. We have gone so far to secure the country. I say rally around and keep these evil forces. You see, they are so ashamed of themselves, they have switched the light off. Look at that. They are cowards, that's what they are. Cowards. They switched the lights off. Look at that. Are these men who are going to lead you to peace and prosperity or to ruination and perdition? Look at them. God knows what they are doing in the dark.
You have achieved remarkable success for Singapore in your lifetime. You've seen it go from a tiny, poor, backward third world country to one of the richest countries in the world. But lots of people feel that you have exercised too tight a control, that you should have opened things up more, that it has been too domineering and coercive a state. What do you say to that?
I say, ask my people, they are given the vote, it's secret. Nobody has ever alleged any chicanery, no bribery, no coercion, no nothing. We have never won less than 62/3 of the vote.
But it's difficult for opposition parties to form.
It is not the business of the government to enable the opposition party to overturn us, right? You expect the Republicans to help the Democrats to overturn them?
No, but leave aside even just the issue of political competition. I just mean you have laws, for example, that allow random testing of people for drugs. You have the famous ban against chewing gum, which used to exercise people's imaginations. Do you feel that you should have let up a little bit?
No, not at all. Because of that, we are now a safe, secure, fun city. The night scene has been transformed in the last 10, 15 years. Any number of nightclubs, the nightlife, al fresco dining.
We were not one people. We were so many different Chinese dialect groups, so many different Indian groups from India, so many different Malay, Javanese, Boyanese, Maduris groups, all brought together under the British to make a living here. We did not share one language. We did not share one future.
Right.
So what are we talking about? So we had first to forge a society gradually through education, teaching everybody English and the mother tongue so that English became our working language, so that today, after 40 years, there is some sense that we share a future. That if Singapore goes down, everybody goes down.
say without the slightest remorse, that we wouldn't be here, we would not have made the economic progress if we had not intervened on very personal matters. Who your neighbor is, how you live, the noise you make, how you spit or where you spit, or what language you use. Had we not done that and done it effectively, we would not be here today.
The first 10 years after Singapore's independence was a period that saw the most rapid transformation. As Prime Minister, Mr. Lee's immediate priority was to build the economy, provide housing, healthcare and education, and create a nation. In his speech on 12 September 1965, Mr. Lee said, "Over 100 years ago, this was a mudflat, swamp. Today, this is a modern city. 10 years from now, this will be a metropolis. Never fear." Mr. Lee courted multinational investors to upgrade Singapore's economy from mass manufacturing to high-tech industry and build the region's finest infrastructure, including a world-class airport, shipping port, roads and communication networks. He established a public housing system, the Central Provident Fund, a savings pool for citizens, and developed a comprehensive health and education program. To build up the nation's defense, Mr. Lee established an armed forces and instituted compulsory national service in 1967, a conscription program for male citizens when they reached the age of 18. Mr. Lee envisioned that a clean and green Singapore would carry a competitive advantage, and what followed was the launch of a tree planting campaign to green the city. Today, Singapore is an internationally known garden city, clean and teeming with greenery.
When it is their own and is porcelain.
In just under a generation, Singapore has transformed into what Mr. Lee described as a first world oasis in a third world region. After leading the PAP in 7 victorious elections, Mr. Lee stepped down on 26 November 1990 and handed over to Mr. Goh Chok Tong. Mr. Lee remained in cabinet as senior minister, a role he described as advisory. On 12 August 2004, Mr. Lee's eldest son Lee Hsien Loong became the next Prime Minister. Mr. Goh became Senior Minister and Mr. Lee assumed a new position of Minister Mentor, a post he held for 7 years before stepping down in May 2011. Mr. Lee spent 52 years in Cabinet and is the world's longest-serving Prime Minister. Singapore's success story is closely linked to the leadership of Mr. LeeKuanYew. With over half a century in government, his legacy is one that will be remembered in the hearts of Singaporeans.